66 million years ago, across the plains and forests of Cretaceous North America, the most iconic dinosaur, and possibly the largest terrestrial predator of all time, was stomping about, the ever-infamous Tyrannosaurus rex. Its hulking size, titanic jaws, banana-sized killer teeth, and lovable tiny arms have made it a fan favorite and an unforgettable creature. And honestly, you'd be hard-pressed to find a paleo documentary or movie without it, especially if it's one about the end of the dinosaur's reign. If they show you a comet, you can bet that somewhere along the way, you're gonna see a T-Rex. But here's the thing, you may not know that the T-Rex belonged to the superfamily known as the Tyrannosauroidea, of which many members have existed and ruled North America as the top predators, all before the T-Rex even came about. We had the Gorgosaurus, Appalachosaurus, Daspletosaurus, etc., etc. However, even then, we usually think of the Rex as the greatest of its kind to live, and also the very last one to be left standing. And yet, it turns out that another one of its kind not only basically lived right alongside it, but was also present on that fateful day when the asteroid came hurtling down. And you've likely never even heard of this dinosaur, nor seen it in any dinosaur documentary, as thanks to its more quote-unquote interesting brethren, it has largely lived under the radar, despite being not only an absolute menace in its own right, but also the co-ruler of North America. This was the Dryptosaurus. Like I said, you probably never heard of this guy before, and it's not because this theropod was just recently discovered. No way, Jose, as it was actually one of the first theropods to ever be discovered, and the first large one from eastern US, being unearthed all the way back in the 1860s, before sliced bread had even been invented. Prior to its discovery, theropods from America had only been known through a few fragmentary teeth. So you can bet people were surprised when a mineral company uncovered not just teeth, but a body of a theropod skeleton in a quarry near the state of New Jersey that contained fragments of the skull, dentary, various teeth, vertebrae, humeri, a partial manus, incomplete pelvis, and a nearly complete left hind limb. To paleontologists, it was clearly a bipedal carnivorous theropod, yet given how far back it was found, they did struggle with classifying this new creature. At first, numerous scientists noted clear similarities between it and the Jurassic-dated Megalosaurus, and thus leading to it being classified as a megalosaurid. And it was dubbed originally as Laelaps aquilungueus, after the dog in Greek mythology that never failed to catch its hunt. However, turns out that a mite was already called Laelaps, and thus it became Dryptosaurus, meaning the one with all the drip. Just kidding. It actually means tearing reptile. And soon this tearing reptile found itself reclassified once more, being dubbed some kind of Coelurosaur with an uncertain placement, as it had some unusual features that didn't fit in with anything discovered thus far. It was only in the mid-1900s that people finally started to note some similarities between it and Cretaceous tyrannosaurids, namely the Albertosaurus and Tyrannosaurus, with the three sharing certain arm morphologies and derived feet. And these loose connections were finally confirmed in 2005, after the most complete specimen to date was unearthed, demonstrating the Dryptosaurus, given its appearance and features, had indeed been a member of the Tyrannosauroidea, and specifically was a Eutyrannosaurian. However, it turns out that it is likely not a member of the more specific subfamily Tyrannosauridae, with its closest relatives instead being the Appalachosaurus and the Bystahyoversor. That being said though, it is essentially the closest relative to Tyrannosaurids, without actually being a true one. And so this was a cool revelation, no doubt, but what had everyone a bit more interested was not its placement, but the timing of the Dryptosaurus, as lo and behold, not only did it live in the United States, but it dated to between 67 and 66 million years ago, putting it side by side with the T-Rex. And yet, the Dryptosaurus is often forgotten about, and it's certainly not a case of it being small enough to have gone right under our noses, as Dryptosaurus was a rather large North American theropod within its own right. Based off of specimens, it's believed that matured individuals would have reached up to 7.5 meters or 25 feet long from snout to tail, while weighing somewhere around 1.5 tons, putting it on par with the largest seen Ceratosauruses or a mid-sized Carnotaurus. So yes, no T-Rex, but was still more than big enough to kill you, and a very wide range of Mesozoic animals. And given its size, you might have actually mistaken one of these coming after you for an actual Tyrannosaurus adolescent. But there were some clear distinctions between it and the T-Rex. For starters, the Dryptosaurus possessed two small, yet distinguishable crests on the top of its face that were located right below the eyes, perhaps being used for mating displays, while its snout and body were in general more streamlined and agilely built than the skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus. It could have also been further distinguished thanks to a reduced humerus, an expansion of its ischial tubercle, an ovoid fossa, and a flat shaft on its fourth metatarsal. Yet, to be honest, if one of these is coming straight at you, I highly doubt you'd have time to care about any of these more specific, nuanced differences. Now, what you would definitely care about though, was another feature that set it apart from the T-Rex, and actually, for the worse, and that was its arms and claws. I know you all are aware of the T-Rex's arms. They are small and kind of adorable. However, the Dryptosaurus's arms were anything but that, taking more inspiration from its ancestors. As in this theropod, the arms are made long, large, muscular, and equipped with ferocious claws. In its case, ones that can measure up to 8 inches or 20 centimeters, which, just for perspective, is over 3 times the length of your standard common Swiss Army knife's blade. And for the one with all the drip, these arms would have definitely been used for combat and hunting, helping individuals to capture prey and tear straight through them. While then it also of course has some wicked teeth to go along with the package, with each being serrated and curved. Perfect for slicing and dicing flesh like it was hot butter. And actually, the teeth are remarkably similar to those seen in the Jurassic Allosaurus, and thus implying that the prey of Dryptosaurus was always in for a bad time, with each get-together so to speak, involving major blood loss and shock. So physically it was quite the package, and it possessed the typical other strengths seen in its kind, namely a keen sense of smell, allowing it to pick up on prey and carrion, as well as binocular vision, which helped it to lock onto targets with deadly accuracy. But what about its hearing? And to that I say, probably good, given its theropod lineage, but it certainly wasn't as good as the sound of these new bone conduction headphones by Raycon, who is also the sponsor of today's video. Now that we're heading into 2026, I bet most of us have some new fitness goals in mind. And so, what better time to get new stuff for the gym, and really anything, than now? These headphones are incredibly unique in that they actually sit outside of the ear and send the sound through minute vibrations into the bone, which almost seems like some tech you'd see in a sci-fi movie. And what's great about this is that you can then listen to your music, podcasts, such as our podcast, all the while being aware of what's going on around you. And these things are built to last, no matter if you're walking down the street or through the forests of Cretaceous North America. Having 13 hours of battery life, are IP68 waterproof and dustproof, and all at a price tag beating that of other big brands. Plus, they also have 3 million customers to back that up, along with a 30-day money-back guarantee. And I can personally say that I'm a huge fan of these headphones, and they're pretty much my go-to when working out. It's the perfect time to upgrade your audio for the new year. Go to buyraycon.com/ExtinctZoo BC to get 20% off site-wide. And thanks Raycon for sponsoring. So all in all, it was definitely an expert killer. The question is though, what exactly did it kill? And this question indirectly leads to an interesting tidbit about the Dryptosaurus and the T-Rex, which is that while the two lived at the exact same time and in the exact same country as far as modern borders go, the two didn't actually ever come face to face, as far as we know. And the reason for this is that the Dryptosaurus inhabited the continent of Appalachia. You see, at some point in history, North America was divided, and I don't mean like now or during a civil war, but rather by a geological feature, the Western Interior Seaway, which was a shallow warm sea that split the continent into two and created the paleocontinents of Laramidia to the west and Appalachia to the east. Typically, dinosaurs found in one of these places weren't really found in the other, being restricted by not only the waters themselves, but the nightmares they harbored, and leading to both sides developing very unique ecosystems. And Appalachia was by far the more enigmatic of the two, as its formations have yielded far less fossils than Laramidia has. Now, while we don't know for sure, given how hard it is to analyze the prehistoric past, it's often believed that by the time the final chapter of the Cretaceous began, the Western Interior Seaway had shrunk considerably, possibly even resulting in a reunification of certain parts of the continent. Yet, Appalachia and Laramidia still remained fairly isolated from one another, perhaps due to periodic flooding from sea level fluctuations, but also because even when two areas connect once again, it can take a while for migrations to start up, and it seems the Dryptosaurus was never given enough time to make it to Laramidia, nor vice versa for the T-Rex, thus allowing it to be the sole ruler of late Cretaceous Appalachia. And this ultimately meant that the Dryptosaurus was ruling over and hunting different dinosaurs than the T-Rex was. So, let's just say, you wouldn't have seen this theropod taking on a Triceratops, for example. Though that being said, based on the formations it has been found in, it did likely prey on various hadrosaurs, like the Hadrosaurus, or hadrosauroids, such as the basal, yet giant, Hypsibema, that might have weighed over 10 tons and measured over 12 meters or 40 feet. Multiple nodosaurs were also known to inhabit the continent, which could have proved a suitable meal, yet hunting these guys given their better armor would have been kinda tricky for the Dryptosaurus, especially since it lacked the crushing bite seen in its larger relatives. And then Ceratops and Sauropods were pretty much out of the question too, as they were straight up missing from the continent, having been absent in the lands at the time. Except that is for a single Ceratops tooth, which was found in what is currently Mississippi, that possibly showed migration towards the very end. However, a Dryptosaurus has also never been found in a formation with the Ceratops tooth, and clearly it seems that whatever the case, Ceratopsians in Appalachia were exceedingly rare. However, what was a bit more common, and could have made up an ample portion of the Dryptosaurus' diet, were actually fellow theropods, namely ornithomimosaurs, who appear to be quite abundant in the east. And this notion is actually rather in line with the build of Dryptosaurus, with its streamlined body and grasping arms, which probably allowed it to hunt and capture these fleeting prey. That could also, by the way, get quite sizey here as well, since Appalachia at the time was home to numerous large-bodied ornithomimosaurs, including some of the largest to ever exist, namely an indeterminate kind that weighed close to 1 ton. So picture about 3 ostriches rolled into one giant. And to go along with a little dinosaur here and there, the Dryptosaurus might have been something of a generalist too, as up until now, the vast majority, and possibly all the areas that it has been found in, would have been coastal and near marine environments during the late Cretaceous, environments that were chock full of both aquatic and semi-aquatic life. In the waters full-time, this included a variety of cartilaginous and bony fish that included larger ones, such as the shark-sized Cephactinus, as well as marine reptiles like multiple medium-sized mosasaurs and plesiosaurs. Then, around the water's edge, you would have found a plethora of amphibians, including frogs, toads, and even salamanders. But certainly not salamanders like you may think, as these guys were chonky ones, definitely being able to make up a good snack since they're over 5 feet or 1.5 meters long. And on the even bigger stage, there were also many different turtles like Corsicellus and Adochis, plus lizards and even various mammals, such as the Diphelodon, a metatherian that was only slightly larger than a Virginia opossum. And yet, that was still good enough to make it Appalachia's largest mammal, and actually one of the largest mammals on Earth at the time. But this is all to say that the Dryptosaurus, at various stages of its life, had a few options to choose from when it came to snacks. But it would have needed to tread carefully. Now, the Dryptosaurus is for now the largest known theropod from Appalachia in the final days of the Cretaceous, plus the overall largest carnivore from the region as well. But there was still some competition, mainly in the form of crocodilians, as there were lots and lots of them. Multiple genera were known to share Appalachia with the Tyrannosaurid. It could range from smaller sizes, like the size of your leg, all the way up to crocs that you might have confused for an alligator. And while nothing alligator size is going to scare a fully grown Dryptosaurus, I doubt the juveniles would want to encounter these crocodilians during one of their adventures. Nor in fact would they probably want to meet another apex predator of Appalachia, a pterosaur. Now I know what you're thinking, we don't usually think of pterosaurs as being all that scary, yet in Appalachia, they sure could be. You first had your standard residents, like the pteranodontoids and related kin, which might have actually made for an occasional meal for the Dryptosaurus, but then you also had the Asdarchidae, a group of pterosaurs that could be quite a doozy. And in Appalachia, the mightiest of the lot was no doubt the Aramborgiania, one of the largest animals to ever fly. In fact, there are only 2 other animals that rival it or exceed its size, the Quetzalcoatlus and Hatzegopteryx, 2 close kins of it. And let's just say, this behemoth was basically a living dragon, minus the flames, and it could have had a wingspan of up to 10 meters or 33 feet, which is like the wingspan of a Cessna 150, a literal plane. But what was arguably even more bonkers was that its neck alone was 3 meters or 10 feet long, taller than Shaq. And overall on the ground, the Aramborgiania might have stood as tall as a giraffe, and thus making baby Dryptosauruses quite the edible option. But I will say that a fully grown Dryptosaurus, on the other hand, likely could have been able to take down even the fully grown individuals. So overall, I'm still giving this round to the theropod. Now, I should mention though, it is important to note that the remains of Aramborgiania found in the US are tentatively assigned to this genus, and are a little bit older in age than the Dryptosaurus. However, where it is found elsewhere, the ages of Aramborgiania do extend to 66 million years as well, meaning there is a good chance that the two did coexist. And honestly, even if they lived together, or didn't, the Dryptosaurus still had a pretty sweet gig in Cretaceous Appalachia, enjoying the benefits that came with isolation. And it would have been really interesting to see how this Tyrannosaurid would continue to evolve and change if it had remained untouched in Appalachia, or had moved on over to Laramidia, perhaps coming into contact with its long-lost cousin, the Rex. Yet, unfortunately for our thought experiment, Mother Nature, or the cosmic universe, had other plans. And the Dryptosaurus only first appeared 67 million years ago, so a baby for a dinosaur. And sadly, it did not stick around for long, as just 1 million years later, the dino's party came crashing down. And similar to the Rex, the Dryptosaurus was wiped away in the KT extinction, officially ending the rather short reign of this co-ruler of North America that has largely been forgotten about. Thanks for watching, and until next time on ExtinctZoo.